everyone. This is Avinash here. I do a quick introduction. I work as a technical program manager with Microsoft, and today I actually want to cover Microsoft Defender for Cloud, how to improve the security posture. So I want to get in depth on what Parimal was actually covering in terms of what actually has been covered in Ignite, plus also some of the nitty-gritties on how to improve the security posture. We'll be covering that in detail. I'll take questions as in how, because I've got one screen at the moment, so I would prefer if I can take questions in the end. Again, I want to thank the Indian Cloud Security Summit team for organizing this event. I think this is a great event for like-minded people like us to share and be presentable in terms of our knowledge sharing and also get some ideas across. So with fairness for time, I'll just continue with the slides. So just a quick intro of what the Microsoft Defender for Cloud is. It's a cloud native application protection platform that is made up of security measures and practices that are designed to protect cloud-based applications from various cyber threats and vulnerabilities. Now, it does actually incorporate the DevOps, the DevSecOps solution that sort of helps with unifying the security management, not only at the code level, but also across multi-cloud and multiple pipelines running environments as well. So today I want to cover in detail about the CSPM, which is the Cloud Security Posture Management solution that services actions that we can actually help to prevent any breaches, especially in the current environment of not only, we are coming out of the COVID era where, most of the people have actually been working from home, and also businesses, they're actually moving back to hybrid environments and whatnot. So I think that's really important to cover on what the what that actually helps in terms of preventing any breaches moving forward. So the cloud workload protection platform is specifically a program that actually covers protection for servers, containers, storage, databases, and other workloads within your environment. So I think that when we talk to our customers, when we talk to our clients, I think this is very important for having these detailed discussions, excuse me, for all these different aspects that sort of cover as part of the broader Microsoft Defender for Cloud platform. So again, that's just a quick slide. In terms of the Defender for Cloud, we, as I mentioned previously, we would like to unify the DevOps sec management, strengthen and manage the security posture, and protect the workloads. And again, this is across multi-cloud environments, as you've seen below. So covers AWS, Azure, GC, and other providers that actually are in the market for that. Now, so to start with, I would like to start with the foundation visibility and best practices. So I think this is one of the big questions that actually come across when we actually meet our clients, or when we go through any discussions around the security posture, is how do we actually understand where we are in terms of the current path for security. So these are some of the visibility and I would say like coffee discussion points, which sort of help us with understanding the environments, but also help them understand how they can actually improve their security posture. So to start with, I normally sort of have these discussions where the secure score is the best way to sort of try and understand where they are and what sort of vulnerabilities that they actually can see. And this is like the fundamental pillar for in terms of understanding the security posture and implementing any recommendations and monitor over time. The cross-cloud resource inventory, I think that is really important, especially around when we want to cover and discover and govern any cloud resources, which is using a centralized security tool. Now, not every client actually uses one security tool. Sometimes they've actually got multiple ones. So I think this is so important when we actually have those discussions with them that yes, this is something that would be really useful to try and understand which is the main tool that actually is being used. Data visualization and reporting. This is again one of the pain points that I actually come across, that the IT team within my organization is able to view, even if it's a small medium business, or even enterprise level. We get these discussions or questions come up that I can see, my IT team can actually see the data, but how do I actually share that across through a CTO or a decision maker, a BDM, as an example? So I think creating those dynamic reports by both sec teams and C-level within Azure Workbooks integrated experience is something that, sorry, apologies, my bad, is complemented by continuous data streaming. So we can always mention that it's real time in terms of the data analytics that they can actually use in terms of reporting aspects, and it is compatible with multiple reporting platforms as well. The next question that I actually come across sometimes is especially around the dev team. All good. We are implementing security posture, but again, that level of discussion with the dev team is specifically around, I've got these pipelines that are running. How do I actually automate that? And how does actually data export actually happens? So I think automatic incident report response that is built within the Logic app is one of the pivotal aspects which sort of cover the security events and how do we integrate that with the SIEM, especially with how we've actually come in terms of our journey with Sentinel. That sort of helps in terms of discussing that if even if the client is actually using other SIEM tools, the integration is seamless. So there are a few integration aspects which the DevOps teams are normally able to perform in terms of running the API calls and making sure that actually that integration happens and they get the unified reporting. So I would like to start with, a customer is actually using a Defender Cloud, and how do they actually manage their inventory? So as an example, I've taken some screenshots. So from here, it's we can actually click on the inventory tab, which actually provides a single view of all monitored resources. So if there are some resources that actually, for example, are not listed here, you can actually click on none. So for example, if they're non-Azure service, we can actually add, we can click on the plus sign, we can run a query, we can download the report, and we can do all that going through this particular section. As you can see, as an example, I've just taken a screenshot of the VMs. We see the monitoring agents, if they're actually installed, not installed, what the recommendations are, and they actually show in various different colors so that anyone within the IT team can sort of look at the inventory and can see what the health, the total number of resources are, unhealthy resources, and they can, by the click of a button, they can actually easily filter and cross-reference across various subscriptions as well. So as you can see, I've just given an example. So it's 60 subscriptions, of which all these resources are actually showing as an example here. So the good thing about, the beauty about the CSPM, especially on the Defender, is that it does a continuous exploration around the resource graph, which is one of the capabilities which actually help us build reports. We can, when we click on the we can do an export to a CSV as an example, or Azure Workbooks, and we can run some logic apps across that. So there are a whole lot of options that we actually get in terms of how we can actually explore and understand our resources better. So I think having an understanding of the inventory on where it is at the moment, I think that actually gives a very clear picture for a customer and gives them that peace of mind. Yes, I've got these unhealthy resources as an example, and I can fix that so that as per the recommendations, so that I'll actually be in a much more secure state. Now, that's good. We've actually managed the inventory. That's great. We have sort of done the asset management in terms of the inventory, and we have made sure that the unhealthy resources are actually now compliant. Now, how do we actually manage the security policy and compliance aspects? That's another question that actually comes up, especially around when we have for example, an organization or a team that actually is running across multiple regions or geographical areas. So from that aspect, in terms of getting a visibility across, because I remember having these conversations that with some of the customers when they actually sort of bring this point that look, that's fine, we're sitting here at the moment, in Australia, but I do have some satellite offices in UK, in US. How do I actually manage the security posture for them? Because I want to do that in one place where I'm sitting. I don't want to, and I've got a centralized IT team, so I don't have resources available in those locations. So what I normally sort of discuss with them is that, okay, let's go through what exactly policies that you've implemented across board in terms of not only the users, in terms of the assets, in terms of any new resources that you're using from other cloud providers that you have sort of embedded or incorporated within your environment. So I think getting that visibility is from an organization level and subscription level is great, because they can actually have a look. As an example here, they can look at various subscriptions, they can look at the management groups, and they can actually pinpoint, yes, this is a centralized space where they can actually manage all the policies in place, especially around what is actually being recommended by the Defender for Cloud. And these recommenders are actually based on industry standards, and again compliant to various regulatory bodies. So that sort of brings a peace of mind to customers. Okay, we are actually in multiple geographical areas, and this is actually a compliance score for various regions as well. Again, rapidly build and deploy new secure environments using Azure blueprints. So, that's one of the great things that sort of come across, especially around when we use the Defender for Cloud. Um, Optimize and improve security. Now, again, that's good. We've actually implemented the policies. We have set up management groups, and we have sort of looked at subscriptions. That's great. Now, how do I fine tune my or improve my security posture? The best way to do that is to reduce the attack vector and the attack surface on which where all the vulnerabilities sort of exist, and applying specific aspects of configurations which are not only part of recommendations but also as part of your organization. So when I have these conversations, I normally sort of bring in light to customers that it's good that you actually are looking at the recommendations as an example on this page, um, but how effective are you in terms of implementing those recommendations? Because the secure score recommendations is actually a score which actually shows that these are some of the areas that you should be addressing. But um, as you can see, the active recommendations are 13 out of 25, and how many have actually been implemented is something that customers sort of have these conversations. So I normally sort of when I have these conversations, I normally sort of have these discussions that yes, it's good to have these recommendations, but it's good to even get a governance report as well. As you can see, we've got that in preview at the moment. which sort of helps in terms of not only the not only from a compliant perspective, but also helps with what the governance policies are actually being recommended and implemented as well. So yeah, these are some of the things that that needs to be addressed. Again, detailed conversations around assessing and optimizing using secure score. I think this is one of the very important aspects, especially around all the environments. If you're actually running multiple environments or multi-cloud environments where um, any of the secure score recommendations are actually being implemented or not. So, when we always have these conversations, customers sort of come up with, you've got like 10 different recommendations. Which ones do you prioritize? So I normally sort of mention that there are various categories of recommendations, which is high risk, medium, low. So depending on how secure you feel your environment should be, you should be implementing those policies based on that. Ideally, our recommendations are you should be looking at all of them at one go. But again, if they're actually running multi-cloud environments and that span across multiple geographical areas, it may take time for them to implement that. But again, that's something that we always recommend. Um, we always also recommend that you should look at the score from a tenant level down to individual subscriptions in terms of a hierarchical aspect. And that sort of helps with improving the security posture once you implement those recommendations by default. So um, that's a great conversation to have. Now, coming to the cloud security posture management, what it actually does is, again, I'm just, continuing on the conversation which Parimal actually started with from the Ignite conversations, is that especially on the security posture management, what it actually does, it actually cuts the noise and puts most critical risks across your multi-cloud and hybrid environments from a security posture management. Um, what it actually does is, in terms of the continuous monitoring and intelligent prioritization from attack path analysis, I'll go through in more details about this, all the 4 points, with some screenshots as well for your visibility. Now, agentless and agent-based scanning. I think this is so important, especially around the when we try and understand any of the attack vector around the path, is in terms of potential lateral movements across across resources and the services, and it actually provides those details, in-depth details. Prevent data breaches and sensitive data exposure. Again, that's part of the policy recommendations. We went through that in the previous slides where we were talking about the governance policies, and what sort of security posture actually has been implemented. I think this is so important in terms of having data aware sensitive policies in the organization. So, for example, if it's an external user, they're coming across, or even if it's a new person or a trainee joining the organization or a team, even if it's for small medium business, someone joining at the reception, or someone doing some work in the DevOps area, having those particular teams and identifying what level of access that they should be having is so important in identifying and ascertaining and limiting the level of risks that an organization can actually face, especially around sensitive data exposure. So, if they're actually joining and they've got access to a whole lot of information within that team, or that business, I think that having that level of visibility across what documents that they have access to and how they can actually work and sort of share that across, I think having that visibility is so important, especially around the data breaches and sensitive data exposure. Centralized visibility with integrated Synapse insights. The cloud security graph integrates insights across the cloud workloads, especially around the DevOps, Microsoft Sentinel, as we've discussed previously, Defender, and Azure Network Security. So this security posture management is so important, especially around giving that level of visibility across, all the different entities that we actually have. um, Remediate vulnerabilities and misconfigurations with governance rules and remediation at scale. We can reach out to resource owners, of identified risks and automatically assign ownerships across organization to drive remediation at scale. I think this is so important. So, for example, if it's a small and medium business, or even if it's an enterprise, reaching out to individual users and specifically identifying those risks in terms of what vulnerabilities that they actually pose in terms of their appliances and the services that they use, and assigning those ownerships that actually gives them that level of trust within the team that yes, they want these services to be addressed, and any configurations that actually have been changed needs to be corrected. That may actually result in vulnerabilities or breaches across the organization. Again, I would like to briefly cover the cloud security graph. Again, this is the agent-led scanning for full visibility across multi-cloud environments and interconnected assets. Identifying and prioritizing lateral movements across security insights. For example, I've given some examples here. We've got some sensitive data in terms of the compliance insights. If someone is actually trying to access through a public IP, and this is internal exposure. If we have a port open, for example, 3389, and they actually do an attack vector that actually comes across with the sensitive data. So I think getting that exposure and how that actually is dealt with is in terms of the SIEM insights and the insights that we actually get, especially around the EASM, that is so important, because it's a graph based queries that proactively find and evaluate security risks across various areas and various data sources. And it also integrates, especially on the DevOps and other compliance and data awareness tools that are actually available across multi-cloud environments as well. Again, regulatory compliance, I briefly covered that earlier. It is so easy to actually do that, especially around when we're going through the Defender for Cloud in terms of the compliance aspects. We can, so if we actually are running under various geographical areas, all the security benchmarks are covered. So with the click of a button, expand our compliance controls, and all these controls can be implemented across all the different resources that we have available, not only within Azure, but also for other cloud providers, like AWS, GC, and other cloud, Oracle Cloud as an example, respectively. So that's an integrated dashboard visibility that actually gives across all the different cloud providers. And again, we can click on audit reports to stay up to date with the latest privacy and security compliance related information with all the services that are available. As you can see, in this particular, we can download the report, we can share that across the CTO or CEO, we can manage the compliance policies, we can run a workbook as well, audit reports. So if there is any auditing that I actually done by end of the year or something like that, it's easy to just spit out audit reports and compliance offerings and everything else as well. In terms of improving secure score, they, as I said, it's not accountability for recommendations, track progress, drive resource owners to action, notify capabilities, so that the owners can focus on specific recommendations that require their attention. So, as the title of the earlier slide said, it's reducing the noise. So it's specifically targeting workload owners, that what specific tasks that they need to actually action. For example, if there's a particular user, I've just given an example here, and they need to address any of those containers or buckets that they're using, especially on the storage aspects, and they can actually click on their particular resource and just click on the secure score and follow the recommendations, and they'll be able to secure their workloads that they're working on. Prioritize risks based on data and insights. Again, Defender for Cloud uses environments context to perform a risk assessment for security issues. The attack path analysis helps to address those the security issues. Again, this is something that is used by the SOC team predominantly, especially around when they want to sort of look at how they're actually managing the vulnerabilities, and especially around the permissions, especially around the attack path analysis. And these can be remediated as and how they're looking at, in terms of, as you can see, we've got various categories in terms of credential expose or computer abuse or something like that. And they can just click on recommendations and resolve all the recommendations that actually have been posted. So understanding the attack surface in cloud environments. The attack surface in a cloud environment refers to various points when an attacker could potentially gain access to the system. So when we have any of such scenarios, most of the time when I have these conversations with customers, they're very in a vulnerable state. I would say, in terms of conversations as well, that we don't want to get attacked. We are very worried about our data because we don't want that to be compromised. We don't want any data leaks. This is very sensitive information. And they want to try and understand how Defender for Cloud, as an example, would be able to address those issues or concerns that they may have. So I normally have this conversation that the attack path, as from the previous slide as well, if I may bring it quickly. So the attack path actually helps with understanding the vulnerabilities and how severe those vulnerabilities are, and also simulating a potential attack path in terms of what the next steps could be from an infiltrator. And that sort of helps with organizations to help identify and prioritize potential vulnerabilities and misconfigurations within the environment, and they can fix those before they actually get attacked. So we've got real world examples where any organization that may actually have gone through any of such potential attacks have been remediated even before they actually had to experience that particular you know attacks within the environment. So yeah. Cloud security graph. Now again, using the Cloud Security Explorer to proactively identify security risks in the cloud environment by running graph-based queries. I wanted to bring this slide specifically in our conversation today is because this is something that is in preview at the moment, but also this is so important in terms of how we can actually manage and we can run some queries based on the security issues that actually come across. So, when customers have these conversations, they're like, I understand, some of our resources may have some, security risks within the environment. So how do I actually address them in terms of running a query to make sure that, that's moving towards the path of automation and sort of helping in terms of not only new assets being allocated or tagged with those particular taglines, and if they're actually exposed to the internet or not, if there is a particular port open, and with specific permission levels, how do I address that on an organization level instead of user level. So this sort of helps with not only reducing sort of managing the assets, but also helps with any lateral movements that may happen across resources across multiple clouds as well. Again, I want to cover the agent and agentless hybrid security approach. So the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, again, this is real-time monitoring and detection across OS and other process deductions. We get the deepest OS visibility across the environments. Um, Active penetration response, again, this is something that we sort of cover, especially on the when we cover the agent and agentless hybrid approach. The agentless vulnerability scanning with Defender CSPM, again, at scale, instantly available on the OS posture issues, no performance impact on workloads. So this is something that also comes in conversations that what impact in terms of workloads may happen, because we're running so many. If you're running any uh, uh, analysis across those workloads, do I need to actually upgrade my resources or something like that? So um, you know it's, again, if it's an agentless, we do not actually depend on workload owners. That can be actually sort of worked upon remotely by the security team, not even actually affecting the current work that the team is performing. I've given an example here. I wanted to share this with you guys, is that in terms of the agent-led scanning for VMs, especially around, excuse me, for example, if it's a customer account, a production VM, we're running a disk snapshot, and how the insights and the metadata sort of work. So if once the scanning is done, it actually brings up the inventory and vulnerabilities list. And as you can see, I'll just sort of try and see if I can maximize the screen or increase the screen. I hope this is much better. So what it actually does is the current secure score, it actually shows, and also in terms of the compliance aspects, but also it actually brings up um, any of the assessed resources and active recommendations based on that. And this is something part of the insights and the metadata, especially around the scanning platform. So this is something that that sort of covers in terms of the workload protections as well. Oops, sorry. Data aware security posture. I think this is so important, especially around the onboarding, auto discovery, and uncover risks and remediate risks as well. This is more about the strengthening of the cloud security posture, especially on the data estates and risks to data breaches. Now, when we talk about multi-cloud environments, as I was discussing previously, we have got an agent and an agentless scenario, where in terms of what we actually discuss, onboarding of multi-cloud resources, especially around the agentless. What it also helps with is the automatic discovery of the cloud data assets to surface accessibility and sensitive data. So when we have these conversations, how do we address and how it actually assesses? So this is something that I've shown in the screenshots, is that it automatically discovers the data assets, and again we can click on the recommendations, and based on that we can cover the data resources and strengthen our security posture. Again, I want to cover specific workloads. As part of the first slide that I sort of brought up, that's pivotal in terms of what workload protection platform actually does. So this is CWPP, is the Cloud Workload Protection Program, which integrates with Microsoft Defender Cloud for various different workloads or work streams that we may be using. So we can sort of cover that for servers, app services, database, storage, containers. I would love to actually go in more detail specifically around covering each of these different workloads. But again, in paucity of time, I would like to sort of address just a few at the moment, which I'll do in the next few slides for you. Now, we do have two plans. As an example, we can have these discussions, in terms of what it actually sort of offers. Again, for databases, I've just sort of briefly covered in terms of what exactly the different cloud protection options do we actually have here, especially in the databases and app services and servers as well. I would like to address this, especially around the log analytics. Again, just for everyone's visibility, because what actually happens is any of the workspace within Azure, we want to sort of address where the logs actually sort of go get collated, and especially around the workspace associated with the subscription. So depending on the geographical location of a resource, the data is actually collected by the log analytics agent and will stream events either into an existing workspace, which comes by default, or associated, and also it actually gets collated depending on the geographical location of that particular work stream. So as I was mentioning, by default, the Defender for Cloud will create a separate workspace per region in each subscription. So this is a very important conversation, because when we actually discuss with customers around multiple geographical areas, they do ask this question: where do the workspace actually gets created? Do we have a centralized workspace, or is it actually related to any specific region? So to answer that question is, the Defender for Cloud will actually create separate workspace per region in each subscription where it is embedded or enabled. If we have multiple subscriptions or need to follow different policy, we can override this, and we can, deploy a centralized workspace per region as well. But again, that's something that is a discussion point with customers. Yes, log analytics workspace is required for Microsoft Defender for Cloud. That goes without saying. And also we need to make sure that any existing log analytics workspace, when we create a new one, or let Microsoft Defender for Cloud actually create one for us. So when we actually try and create, or when we actually go through this tab, we can actually use that. There's one important advice that I want to sort of mention here, is that if you're planning to use Sentinel, especially around with Defender for Cloud, it cannot use a default workspace. So that is created by Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So we have to actually set up a separate workspace for that. Best practices for an optimal log analytics workspace design is we need to consolidate as much as possible into a central workspace. Minimum bandwidth cost by creating regional workspaces or sending Azure resources in the same Azure region as your workspace. I have seen there's a lot of misconfigurations that actually happen sometimes when we talk about different regions. So I think this is something I wanted to collate and sort of share with you all, that these are some of the best practices that we should follow, especially around when we talk to our clients and customers, that they should follow these eight points, pivotal points in here. So moving forward is the log analytics role-based access control options within resource-centric and table-level access should be set up before creating a workspace based on the RBAC requirements. The table level retention is a great feature, and we need to, when we especially around different retention settings for different types of data, this is highly recommended. Using of ARM templates to deploy VMs, configuring around the VM extensions, that is so important to avoid any conflicts. Azure policy, again, this is something on a highly recommended to enforce installation and configuration of log analytics VM extensions, especially around DevOps when we're using templates, and especially on the Visual Studio when we're running some pipelines. I think this is highly recommended. Avoid multi-homing, as it can have undesired outcomes and costs. We need to strive to resolve by applying appropriate RBAC. RBAC is so important. I think that's the foundation in terms of when we're actually setting up any policies and any solutions, especially around log analytics and monitoring solutions, and also involving Sentinel or any other SIEM, as a matter of fact. Yeah, so by selecting and installing Azure monitoring solutions that control the ingestion costs. So I think having that cost factor is so important, especially around what we actually propose to our customers. Again, I just collated some of the questions that may come up, in one of the slides is sovereignty and regulatory compliance. Yes, if the data resides in a specific location, yes, it is compliant. Data ownership, yes, if the data belongs to separate entities, it does actually have the data ownership. Multiple tenants, can they be monitored? Yes, if multiple monitoring tenants consider Lighthouse, this is something that is recommended. Granular data access control, try RBAC or table level RBAC, as I covered in the previous slide. Retention, yes, try using data level retention or automate data deletion. Split billing, can I do split billing? Yes, you can, but try tagging. Tagging is so important, reporting and cross-charging. If there are legacy architectures, can I still use log analytics workspace? Yes, you can, but again, we do recommend re-architecting workspaces, because the only reason we recommend that is because any of the legacy architectures come with their own technical limitations. So we need to understand and re-architect based on the current security posture, and we need to understand in terms of the compliance how that actually sort of works, not only from a GDPR perspective, but also from a data sovereignty perspective as well.
Again,
yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to be reminded that it's almost time.
Yes, I'm almost there. So again, this is something, in terms of the log analytics workspace, we've got the data retention options here. So normally it's set to, 30 days, 31 days, but you can increase that to 730 days. I'll quickly go in terms of server protection for Defender for Endpoint. Again, this is something delivers for security features. Endpoint EDR, I think this is so important. And again, I'm happy to sort of reach out offline to discuss this in more detail. If anyone wants a demo as well, I have a lab set up as well, which I'm happy to sort of share and discuss more in details. Again, what data that actually collects, versions, missing updates, misconfigurations of OS, and everything else as well. Data collection, we can enable those extensions with a few clicks, and everything else that actually just put that in the screenshot here as well. So it does that. Again, all events, we can have common events or minimal events in terms of data collection levels. Onboarding, firewall requirements, I've just put that in here, and I'll share this slide. So again, thank you all, and I know I've run out of time. Happy to take questions offline if that helps. Just want to reach out to the Security Summit team. Is that possible that I can take questions offline later?
Yes, you can actually, or they could even reach you out over the social media.
Yes, please.
Alessandro here. You can actually stay in the call if you want, and people, if there are any other questions people want to actually, please feel free to answer. I'll be more than happy to have you doing that.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Avinash, you actually have some questions over the chat, so you can try replying for the same over the chat.
Yep, I'll do that.
Yeah, and it's almost time. We would go for the next session with that. So thank you so much for your valuable session and your time as well. I hope it was interesting for others too. And
thank you so much.
With that, let's move on to the next track, which is said to be by Alessandro on managing the cloud resource effectively with Microsoft Azure Security.